Welcome back to Firefly Studios. My name is Kadia, and today we are going to continue our Unity Fundamentals series, this time talking about 3D particles. It's very similar to the 2D particles, honestly, but there's a few new options that we have available to us, so let's get right into it. So what we're going to do is create a 3D object, create a particle system. We'll just call this effect. And then we can come down here to our renderer settings. These are all the settings for a particle. You change the billboard to mesh, and you have mesh options you can do. So by default, it is a cube. You can select some like default ones, like a sphere or capsule or whatever. You can also make your own mesh should you wish. I'm going to keep it on a cube. Then I'll change my material to the cube one. You can see now we got little cubes flying. And we can do cool stuff with this. I like to use this as kind of like a blood effect. So up at the top here, we have all these settings up here. I'm going to change the duration to something slower. We can change the lifetime. This is how long the particles live on your screen. So in our case, I'm thinking like this is going to be a burst. So we can go pretty short on this. And then for any of these options, you have the option to click the drop down and select size or speed. And on this drop down, you have the options between curve, random between constants, or random between two curves. I like to use the two constants. So I'm going to make them start one a little bit slower and one a little bit faster. So there's a little bit of a randomness to the speed of these now. And we can change our 3D start size. These will be the size of our objects. So by making them down to 0.3, it shrunk our cubes. Then we can mess around with our color, which I will set random between two colors. I'm going to make some of them red, and I'll make some of them maybe a little bit of a pinkish color, maybe a darker purple color. Yeah, I like that. That looks pretty cool. I'm going to add a gravity modifier to them. So now they fall and hit against the floor. If I zoom in, it's pixelated because in our game view, if you zoom in, it pixelates everything because this is treated as a rasterized image. But you can see them kind of going down. And then we can mess with some of these other settings. So let's make it stop action, destroy. This is useful for when this particle is done, it will destroy itself. So you don't have a ton of particles sitting up there clogging up your computer's memory. Our next step is we're going to go to emission. We're going to change it from rate over time to a burst. So we'll just see like a burst of particles. We can also affect the shape. So if you look over here in the scene view, I've got this diagram that shows the shape depending on what I choose. So I could choose a sphere, then kind of burst out like that. I could choose a donut if I wanted to. There's all sorts of options. I think I will go with the hemisphere. And then we can change its arc. So if we wanted to, we could make it only come in a like half sphere direction. I'm going to keep mine on 360. 360. And then I like our radius. We will change our rotation though. I think it would be interesting if we had it coming up like this. And then I'll move my particle effect up a little bit. I'm thinking it might come from like the center of the player. Let me zoom out on the scene view so it's not so pixelated. All right, so now we've got an effect like this. It would be cool if we could make them bounce, and you can do that. All you have to do is come down to collision and enable collision. And then I don't want type world. We want it to collide with the world. See how it's now bouncing around like that? And then we can increase our bounce effect. So if I set this to something like 10, look at them go. They were bouncing all over the place. So you can have fun with these types of things. I'm going to set mine to like 0.1. So it's just got a little bit of a bounce. Maybe 0.3. I like that. Your dampen will cause the friction to affect it. So if I do, as it bounces, see how it doesn't travel as far, it kind of loses its momentum. I like that. And we can choose layers to have it collide with if we only want it to collide with the ground, for instance. Other fun things to mess around with is this one over here, size over lifetime. So this is using a curve. You can see our curve editor down here. We can select one of these preset options, and you can see they shrink now over time. Sub-emitters are really cool. You can have multiple particles happening. So I'm going to duplicate this particle, and we'll call this effect 2. I'll change the colors on the second one. We'll do yellow and green. And then we're going to move this down here. I'm going to just make it a temporary prefab down here. It should really go in its own folder, but just for the purposes of this example, I'm going to move it down there. And then for our sub-emitters, we're going to do on collision. We're going to give it this particle system right here. So you just have to make sure your sub-emitter is a child. So now we see all sorts of explosions. It kind of looks like some sort of like potion or something's going off, and there's a bunch of little explosions caused by it. So one of these particle systems, the small one, is being summoned every time the big one, each one of those particles collide with something. So I can mess with the settings there. We'll change the probability to like 0.2% of the time. So only sometimes, so there's a lot less of them. You can do really cool stuff with this. You can do it on death. So when the first particle ends, then there's like an explosion afterwards. You can do it trigger. So this would be when you do something to cause it to happen. Manual is also similar to that approach. Birth is at the beginning, so they both spawn at the same time. So all sorts of fun stuff we can have here. I'm going to leave it on collision though. That's kind of fun. All right. Another cool thing you can mess around with is trails. Now this is going to chunk my PC. What you'll see how I've got the trails for the particles. We need to assign a trail material though. So I'm going to assign, let's go this material. So now you can see there's a trail going off. But yeah, for the most part, you can just mess with these settings till you get something you want. Particles are tons of fun. They're a really cool way to add a bunch of like spice to your game. I hope you found this video informative. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons, and I will see you in the next one.